The chamber fell silent. Not the quiet of peace, but the silence of fear. High Arbiter Volmic had ruled the Galactic Council for 6,000 years. He had watched empires rise and crumble. He had seen wars that burned across 1,000,000 stars. Nothing surprised him anymore, not until today, not the great doors of the council chamber opened, and a single human walked through. He was small by galactic standards. His skin was soft. His bones were fragile. He carried no weapons, wore no armor, and brought no guards. Behind him, through the massive viewport that showed the space beyond Nexus Prime, 200 human warships hung motionless against the stars. They had appeared without warning. No hyperspace signatures. No energy readings. One moment the space was empty. The next moment, death itself waited outside the council's door. Volmec rose from his throne of crystallized starlight. His voice echoed through the vast chamber where 12,000 representatives from 800 species watched in frozen terror. "You have violated 17 galactic treaties," Volmec said. "Your species was quarantined. You were forbidden from leaving your solar system. You were forbidden from developing faster than light travel. You were forbidden from—" "My name is David Okonkwo," the human said quietly. "I am here to ask a question." The chamber erupted in outrage. Species that had not agreed on anything for millennia united in their fury. How dare this creature from a backwater death world interrupt the High Arbiter? How dare he stand before the most powerful governing body in the known universe and speak without permission? But David did not move. He did not flinch. He simply waited, and slowly the chamber grew quiet again, because something in the way he stood there, calm and patient and utterly unafraid, reminded them why humanity had been quarantined in the first place. 63 hours ago, David said, we received a distress signal. It came from a species called the Mirathi. The message said, "They are killing our children. Please help us. Anyone." In the corner of the chamber, a small group of beings huddled together. They were Mirathi survivors, brought here by the human fleet. Their silver skin was scarred. Their eyes held the hollow look of those who had watched everything they loved burn. "We answered," David continued. "We broke your quarantine. We crossed 3,000 light years in 4 hours. And we found a Dominion extermination fleet reducing the Mirathi homeworld to ash." He turned slowly, looking at each section of the chamber. At the Dominion delegation, massive beings of living metal who sat in arrogant silence. At the High Arbiter himself. At the hundreds of species who had done nothing while genocide unfolded. "My question is simple," David said. "Why did you let this happen?" High Arbiter Volmic's crystalline form flickered with agitation. The Dominion pacification action was lawfully approved by this council. The Mirathi were developing prohibited technologies. They were a threat to galactic stability. They were artists, David said. Poets, musicians. Their greatest weapon was a singing crystal that could make you cry from beauty. And you approved their extermination because the Dominion told you they were dangerous. "You do not understand galactic politics," Volmec said coldly. "You are children. Your species has existed for the blink of an eye. You have no right to judge us." David smiled. It was a small smile, almost sad, but something in it made ancient species remember why they feared the dark. "You called us Deathworlders," he said. "You looked at our planet and saw a nightmare. Crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, predators everywhere, diseases that mutate faster than anything in the galaxy. And at the top of that mountain of death, you found us." He took a step forward. Just one step, but throughout the chamber, representatives shifted nervously. "You were terrified. So you locked us away, surrounded our solar system with warning beacons, told the entire galaxy that Earth was forbidden. For 200 years, we watched the stars, and wondered why no one would speak to us. His voice hardened. Now we know. You were not protecting the galaxy from us. You were protecting yourselves from what we would do when we discovered the truth. What truth? Volmik demanded. That your civilization is built on silence. That you watch species die and do nothing because it is easier than fighting. That the Dominion has committed genocide against 31 species in the last 500 years. And this council approved every single one. The Dominion Prime Executor, a towering figure named Krath, rose from his seat. His body was forged from living metal, designed for war, incapable of fear. You dare accuse us? Krath's voice was like grinding stone. We are the peacekeepers of this galaxy. We maintain order. We eliminate threats before they grow. You eliminate anyone who might challenge you, David replied. Anyone who develops technology you cannot control. Anyone who asks questions you cannot answer. He gestured to the Mirathi survivors. These people were not a threat. They simply had something you wanted. Enough. Volmik slammed his staff against the floor. Human, you have made your accusations. Now hear our response. Your fleet will stand down. Your species will return to quarantine. Any resistance will be met with the full force of galactic law. David tilted his head. And if we refuse? Then the Dominion will destroy you. Your fleet, your planet, your entire species. We have crushed 100 civilizations. You are nothing. For a long moment, David was silent. Then he laughed. It was a soft sound, almost gentle, but it echoed through the chamber like thunder. You still do not understand, he said. We did not come here to fight you. We came here to warn you. He turned to face the viewport, where 200 human warships waited in perfect formation. 63 hours ago, the Mirathi sent a distress call. They sent it in every direction, hoping someone would hear. Do you know how many species received that signal? No one answered. 4,712, David said. Do you know how many responded? Silence. One. Just one. A species you locked away because you were afraid of what we might become. He turned back to face the council. Now ask yourselves this. If we were the only ones willing to help, what does that say about your civilization? And what do you think will happen when every oppressed species in this galaxy learns that someone finally stood up? High Arbiter Volmek's light dimmed. For the first time in millennia, he felt something cold moving through his ancient consciousness. What do you want? He asked quietly. David's expression did not change. We want the genocide to stop. We want the Dominion held accountable. We want a seat on this council. And we want you to understand something very clearly. He walked toward the viewport, toward those waiting ships, and stopped with his back to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. You called us Deathworlders. You thought that meant we were monsters. But that is not what it means at all. It means we survived things that would have destroyed any other species. It means we do not give up. It means that when someone screams for help, we answer. Always. He turned one final time. The Mirathi screamed. We answered. And now the galaxy knows that someone will fight for them. That changes everything. In the corner, the Mirathi survivors wept. But for the first time since their world burned, their tears were not from grief. They were from hope. And throughout the chamber, 800 species watched a single human stand defiant before the most powerful authority in the universe. And they wondered, what happens now? The answer was simple. Everything. The Dominion fleet arrived at the Kethany system 3 days after the council confrontation. 90 warships, each one larger than a mountain, each one carrying enough firepower to crack a planet in half. The Kethany had sent their own distress signal. They were the second species to do so since humanity broke the quarantine. They would not be the last. Admiral Grace Mackey stood on the bridge of the human flagship Endurance, watching the Dominion vessels emerge from hyperspace. Her crew was young, untested, born on a world that had known peace for over a century. None of them had ever fought a real battle. But Grace had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. She had studied every war in human history. She had learned from the victories and the defeats. She understood something that the Dominion could not comprehend. Humans were not soldiers. They were survivors. "Admiral," her tactical officer said nervously, "they outnumber us 3-1. "I know. Their ships are larger. Their weapons are more powerful. Their shields, I know." Grace looked at the young man. He was barely 25, raised in an era of peace, trained in simulations that could never capture the reality of war. He was afraid. Good. Fear kept you alive. Fear reminded you what you were fighting for. "Tell me something," Grace said quietly. "Do you know why humans are the apex predators of Earth?" The tactical officer blinked. "Because we are intelligent? Every species in the galaxy is intelligent." "Try again." "Because we make tools? The Dominion makes better tools." "Try again." He thought for a moment. "I do not know." Grace smiled. "Because we do not stop. We chase prey until it collapses. From exhaustion. We fight diseases that would kill anything else. We survive ice ages and meteor impacts and catastrophes that should have ended us. We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. But we are the most stubborn creatures in the known universe." She turned back to the viewport. The Dominion fleet was forming attack formations, preparing to sweep aside the 30 human ships that stood between them and the Kethany homeworld. "They think this will be easy," Grace said. "They have never fought something that refuses to die." The Dominion commander was named Vrex. He had personally overseen the destruction of 12 species. He looked at the human fleet with something close to contempt. These creatures were soft, fragile. Their ships were small, their weapons primitive, their numbers laughable. This would be over in minutes. "Open a channel," Vrex commanded. "Let them surrender with dignity before we destroy them." The channel opened. Grace Mackey's face appeared on his screen. She was calm, relaxed, almost bored. "Dominion Fleet, this is Admiral Becky of the Earth Defense Force. You are violating the sovereign space of the Kethany people. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Vrex laughed. The sound echoed through his bridge like cracking stone. "Consequences? Human, look at my fleet. Look at your ships. You cannot possibly believe you will survive this battle." Grace tilted her head. "You are right. Some of us will not survive. But you know what the difference is between your species and mine? Enlighten me. When your soldiers die, they die alone, following orders they never chose, fighting for a cause they were programmed to believe in. When my people die, they die free. They die knowing they chose to be here. They die for something that matters." She leaned forward. "And that is why we will not run. That is why we will not surrender. And that is why, when this battle is over, you will understand exactly what kind of enemy you have made." Vrex cut the channel. His contempt had not wavered, but somewhere deep in his programming, something stirred. An unfamiliar sensation. A warning he did not understand. He ignored it. "All ships, attack formation. Destroy them." The Dominion fleet surged forward. 90 warships against 30. It should have been a slaughter. It was. Just not the kind Vrex expected. The human ships did not form defensive lines. They did not try to match the Dominion's overwhelming firepower. Instead, they scattered like leaves in a storm, moving in patterns that made no tactical sense. Until they did. The first Dominion ship exploded without warning. A human vessel had appeared inside its shield perimeter, fired a single torpedo directly into its reactor core, and vanished before the debris finished spreading. Then another, and another. The human ships were using something impossible. They were folding space itself, jumping from position to position faster than the Dominion sensors could track. They were everywhere and nowhere, striking from angles that should not exist, vanishing before return fire could touch them. But more terrifying than the technology was what happened when the Dominion managed to catch them. A human destroyer called Defiance was surrounded by 5 Dominion cruisers. Its engines were damaged. Its weapons were depleted. There was no escape. The Dominion expected surrender. Instead, the Defiance accelerated directly toward the largest cruiser. Its captain, a woman named Rosa Vila, transmitted a final message on all frequencies. To my crew, it has been an honor. To my family, I love you. To the Dominion, this is what happens when you corner something that refuses to die. The Defiance rammed the cruiser at full speed, its remaining reactor going critical on impact. Both ships vanished in a sphere of nuclear fire. And in the chaos, 3 more human vessels escaped the trap. Across the battle, similar scenes played out. Human crews fought with a ferocity that defied understanding. When they could win, they won. When they could not, they made sure their deaths cost the enemy dearly. After 4 hours, the Dominion fleet was shattered. Vrex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 63 of his 90 ships were destroyed. The humans had lost 11. How? He whispered. How is this possible? Grace Mackey's face appeared on his screen again. She looked tired now. Blood stained her uniform. But her eyes were steady. I told you, she said quietly. We do not stop. We do not surrender. And we do not forget. She gestured to her tactical officer. Show him. The display changed to show the Kethany homeworld. 8 billion beings huddled in their cities, watching the sky, waiting to learn if they would live or die. Those people called for help, Grace said. They did not know if anyone would answer. They just screamed into the void and hoped. And we came. Because that is what humans do. We answer. Vrex felt his programming crumbling. Something was wrong. Something had changed. The certainty that had guided his entire existence was dissolving like ice in sunlight. This is not over, he said. The Dominion will send more ships. More warriors. We will. You will lose, Grace interrupted. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, you will face something you cannot program away. You will face a galaxy that is no longer afraid. And when that happens, all your power, all your ships, all your soldiers will mean nothing. She leaned closer to the screen. Because hope is more dangerous than any weapon. And you just showed everyone that hope is possible. The surviving Dominion ships retreated into hyperspace. The battle was over. On the Kethany homeworld, people emerged from shelters and looked up at the sky. The human fleet hung there, battered and broken, bleeding atmosphere and trailing debris. But still there, still fighting, still refusing to abandon those they had sworn to protect. For the first time in 500 years, someone had stood against the Dominion and won got and across the galaxy. Other species began to listen. Other voices began to whisper. Other hands began to reach for weapons they had hidden away in fear. Revolution had begun, and it would. Not stop until everything changed. The emergency. Summit was called 7 days after the Battle of Kethany. Every major power in the galaxy sent representatives. Every species that could travel to Nexus Prime crowded into the Great Council Chamber. The topic was simple. What to do about humanity. Dominion Prime Executor. Krath stood before the assembly like a mountain of living metal. His voice carried the weight of 500 years of conquest. The humans must be destroyed. There is no alternative. They have proven themselves too dangerous, too unpredictable, too willing to interfere in matters beyond their understanding. If we do not act now, they will spread their chaos across every corner of the galaxy. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Many agreed. The humans were terrifying. They had broken the quarantine. They had defeated a Dominion fleet. They had given hope to species that were supposed to remain hopeless. Hope was dangerous. Hope made people fight back. High Arbiter Volmek raised his staff for silence. The Dominion position is noted. We will now hear from the human delegation. The chamber doors opened. But instead of the single representative they expected, a procession entered. Humans walked at the front, but behind them came others. Mirathi survivors with their silver skin and haunted eyes. Cathany delegates in their flowing robes of woven light. Representatives from the Viral, the Tessic, the deep swimmers of ocean crime. 17 species. All of them survivors. All of them saved by humanity in the past month. The human leading the Ames delegation was a woman named Fatima Reyes. She was small even by human standards. Her hair was gray. Her hands trembled slightly with age. She looked like someone's grandmother, but when she spoke, her voice filled every corner of the chamber. "Before I begin," Fatima said, "I want to tell you a story. When I was a child, my village was destroyed by a flood. The water came without warning. It swept away everything we had. My mother, my brothers, my home. I was 7 years old, clinging to a piece of wood, watching my world disappear." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "A stranger saved me. A man I had never met. He jumped into the water without hesitation, without knowing if he would survive, without asking what reward he would receive. He pulled me to safety and then went back for others. He saved 9 people that day before the current took him." Her eyes swept across the chamber. "I never learned his name, but I learned something important. I learned that there are people in this universe who run toward danger instead of away from it. People who hear screaming and answer. People who refuse to look away when others are suffering." She gestured to the survivors behind her. The Mirathi screamed. The Cathany screamed. The Viral and the Tessic and a dozen other species screamed. And your council did nothing. You watched. You voted. You approved. You told yourselves that it was lawful, that it was necessary, that it was for the greater good. Fatima took a step forward. But it was not good. It was cowardice. It was complicity. It was murder wrapped in the language of law. Krath slammed his metal fist against his podium. "How dare you lecture us? Your species has existed for a heartbeat. You know nothing of galactic politics. You know nothing of the difficult choices that must be made to maintain order." "I know what genocide looks like," Fatima replied quietly. "Humans have committed it. We have survived it. We have spent centuries trying to understand why intelligent beings murder each other over differences that should not matter. And we have learned one thing above all else." She turned to face him directly. "Evil does not come from monsters. Evil comes from people who convince themselves that their victims are not really people, that their suffering does not matter, that the greater good requires their destruction." She pointed at the Mirathi survivors. "You looked at them and saw a threat. We looked at them and saw children, families, artists, dreamers. We saw people. And when people are dying, we do not calculate political advantage. We help." High Arbiter Volmek interrupted. "This is very moving, human. But it does not change the reality. Your fleet is small. Your technology, while impressive, cannot match the full might of the Dominion. If we allow this conflict to continue, billions will die. Perhaps trillions. Is that what you want?" Fatima smiled. It was a sad smile, weary and ancient. "You are right. We cannot defeat the Dominion alone. Our fleet is small. Our resources are limited. If this remains a war between humanity and the Dominion, we will eventually lose." Kraft laughed. "Finally, some sense. Surrender now, and perhaps we will spare your homeworld." "I said we cannot win alone," Fatima continued. "But we are not alone anymore." She gestured, and the survivors behind her stepped forward. One by one, they spoke. Amir the Elder described watching Dominion ships burn her world. A Kethany child talked about hiding in a cellar while bombs fell. A Vril warrior told of his species being hunted to near extinction for developing technology the Dominion wanted. The testimony lasted hours. Story after story of suffering, loss, and betrayal. Story after story of a galaxy that had watched and done nothing. And then something unexpected happened. A delegate from the Tussock stood. The Tussock were a major power, a species that had survived for 1,000,000 years by never taking sides. They had remained neutral through every galactic conflict. "The Tussock have heard enough," the delegate said. "For too long, we have watched the Dominion commit atrocities while hiding behind our neutrality. We told ourselves it was not our concern. We told ourselves that involvement would only make things worse." He turned to face Krath. "We were wrong. Neutrality in the face of evil is not wisdom. It is complicity." The Tussock formally withdraw from the Council's Mutual Defense Treaty. Any attack on human vessels will be considered an attack on Tussock interests. The chamber erupted. The Tussock had never taken sides. This changed everything. But they were not alone. The Helix Consortium, a trading alliance of 40 species, announced they would no longer do business with the Dominion. The Collective of Free Minds, a network of artificial intelligences, declared their support for humanity's cause. One by one, powers that had remained silent for centuries began to speak. Krath watched his carefully constructed order crumble. His programming demanded action, demanded response, demanded the crushing of this rebellion before it spread further. But for the first time, he hesitated. There were too many voices, too many allies, too many species suddenly remembering that they had options beyond obedience. "This is not over," he said finally. "The Dominion will not be intimidated by this display. We will mobilize our full military force. Every ship, every warrior. We will." "You will try," Fatima interrupted. "And maybe you will succeed. Maybe you will destroy us all. But let me tell you something, Executor." She walked toward him, this small old woman, until she stood directly before his towering metal form. "Humans are not afraid of death. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day of our existence. Death is an old friend to us. So go ahead. Bring your fleets. Bring your armies. Bring everything you have." She looked up at him with eyes that had seen floods and wars and suffering beyond measure. "But know this, for every human you kill, 10 more will rise. For every species you crush, 20 will remember why they should fight. You have spent 500 years building an empire of fear. We just showed the galaxy that fear can be overcome." She turned her back on him and walked toward the exit. "The revolution has already begun. You cannot stop it. You can only choose whether to be destroyed by it or transformed by it." As she left, the survivors followed. And behind them, slowly, hesitantly, delegates from species that had been silent for centuries began to stand. Krath watched them go and felt something he had never experienced before. It took him a moment to identify it. It was doubt. And doubt, he realized too late, was far more dangerous than any weapon humanity had ever built. The Dominion fleet that arrived at Sol System was the largest armada ever assembled. 300,000 warships darkened the space around Earth's sun like a swarm of metal locusts. They carried enough firepower to crack planets, Enough soldiers to conquer 1,000 worlds. Prime Executor Krath stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. The blue-green world looked so fragile, so vulnerable, so easy to destroy. "Scan for human defenses," he commanded. His officers obeyed. The results made no sense. "Sir, we are detecting no defensive installations, no orbital platforms, no weapons satellites. What about their fleet?" "No ships detected, sir. The system appears to be completely undefended." Krath felt his programming stir with unease. This was wrong. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not flee. Humans fought until their last breath, and then found ways to fight some more. Expand the scan. Check the asteroid belt. The outer planets. They must be hiding somewhere. The scan expanded. The results remained the same. Nothing. The entire solar system was empty, except for Earth itself, hanging there like an offering. "It is a trap," Krath said. "It must be." "Sir, what kind of trap could possibly?" The tactical officer never finished his sentence. Because in that moment, the sun changed. It flickered. Just once. A pulse of light that rippled across the entire star, visible even from millions of kilometers away, and then Sol began to move, not drift, not wobble, move. The entire star shifted position, pulling its planets along with it, sliding through space like a ship sailing through water. Krath watched in disbelief as Earth, the Moon, Mars, the entire inner solar system simply vanished. They did not jump into hyperspace. They did not cloak or hide. They folded into something else, some dimension that his sensors could not penetrate, some place that his weapons could not reach. The humans had moved their sun. They had taken their entire home system and put it somewhere the Dominion could never follow. "That is impossible," Krath whispered. "That technology does not exist. That technology cannot exist." A message appeared on his communication screen. David Okonkwo's face looked back at him. "Hello, Executor. Looking for something?" Krath's metal fists clenched hard enough to crack his own armrests. "Where are you? What have you done?" "We did what humans do," David replied calmly. "We adapted. You wanted to destroy our home, so we moved it. You wanted to trap us, so we escaped. You wanted to end us, but we found a way to survive. You cannot hide forever. We will find you. We will. You will waste time and resources chasing ghosts while your empire burns around you." David leaned forward. "Did you really think we were just fighting for ourselves? We have spent the last 6 months building something. A network. An alliance. A revolution." The view screen split into dozens of images. Human ships appearing near Dominion installations across the galaxy. Oppressed species rising up against their occupiers. Communication networks lighting up with messages of resistance and hope. Right now, at this very moment, rebellions are breaking out on 400 worlds. Species you thought you had crushed forever are remembering how to fight. And they are not fighting alone anymore. David's expression hardened. "You brought 300,000 ships to destroy one planet. But you left your empire undefended. And while you were coming here to kill us, we went there to free everyone else." Krath felt something cracking inside his programming. This was not how war worked. This was not how victory was achieved. You gathered your forces, crushed your enemies, and moved on. That was the way. That had always been the way. But humans did not fight that way. Humans fought like the persistence predators they were. They did not meet strength with strength. They ran and dodged and adapted and waited. They struck where you were weak, retreated when you were strong, and never, ever stopped. "Recall the fleet," Krath ordered. "All ships return to Dominion space immediately." "Sir, if we leave now, the humans are not here." "They were never here. This entire system was bait, and we took it like fools. Return to Dominion space. Now. The fleet turned. 300,000 ships began the journey home, leaving an empty solar system behind them. But they were already too late. On a world called Threshold, the first Dominion garrison fell. The local species, the Ven, had been enslaved for 2 centuries. They had forgotten what freedom felt like. But when human soldiers appeared in their skies, when they heard the message that someone had come to help, they remembered. They remembered how to fight. The Dominion garrison was not prepared. They had grown complacent, certain that the Ven were broken, certain that no one would ever challenge their authority. They were wrong. Captain Thomas Adebayo led the human strike team that coordinated with the Ven resistance. He was a quiet man, a former teacher who had joined the military because he believed in the mission. Not conquest, not glory, just helping people who needed help. Keep your heads down, he told the Ven fighters. Strike fast, retreat faster. Do not try to hold territory. Make them chase you. Make them stretch their resources. Make them understand that every corner of this world is hostile. The Ven learned quickly. They had spent 2 centuries dreaming of this moment. They knew every tunnel, every hiding place, every weakness in the Dominion's occupation. They simply needed someone to show them that fighting back was possible. Within 3 weeks, Threshold was free. The same story repeated across the galaxy. Human ships appeared, delivered weapons and training and hope, then vanished before Dominion reinforcements arrived. They left behind sparks that grew into fires that the Dominion could not extinguish, but it was not without cost. David Okonkwo watched the casualty reports on his screen. Thousands of humans dead. Tens of thousands of allied species lost. Entire worlds devastated by Dominion retaliation. War was ugly. War was painful. War demanded prices that no one should have to pay. Are we doing the right thing? His aide asked quietly. All this death, all this suffering, was breaking the quarantine worth it? David was silent for a long moment. A philosopher on Earth once said that evil triumphs when good people do nothing. For 200 years, we did nothing. We watched the stars and wondered why no one would talk to us. We did not know that while we dreamed of contact, civilizations were burning. People were dying. Species were being erased from existence. He turned to face his aide. Now we know. And once you know, you cannot pretend ignorance. Once you see suffering, you cannot look away. The quarantine kept us safe, but it also kept us silent. Breaking it was the hardest decision we have ever made. But it was the right one. A communication alert interrupted them. Priority signal from the Tessic Intelligence Network. We have located the Genesis engine, the message read. Coordinates attached. This is the heart of Dominion control. Destroy it, and their warriors will be free. David stared at the coordinates. The Genesis engine. The ancient device that had created the Dominion species. That maintained their loyalty programming. That kept them enslaved to their own purpose. If they could reach it, if they could disable it, the war might end overnight, but the engine was located on the Dominion homeworld itself, the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. Getting there would be nearly impossible. Nearly, not completely. Assemble the strike team, David said. Our best pilots, our best soldiers, our best minds. This is what we have been working toward. This is how we end it. His aide hesitated. The Council fleet is still out there. If Krath intercepts us, then we die trying. But we have to try. Because somewhere out there, right now, people are fighting and dying because they believe help is coming. We cannot let them down. He looked at the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere in that vast darkness, 300,000 Dominion warships were racing back to defend an empire that was already crumbling. "Begin the operation," David said. "It is time to finish what we started." The human fleet began to move. Not toward safety, not toward retreat, toward the heart of the enemy, toward the end of everything or the beginning of something new. David Okonjo woke in chains. The Genesis engine towered above him, a structure of impossible complexity, pulsing with energy that had sustained the Dominion for 500,000 years. Its light was cold, ancient, powerful beyond measure, and standing before it was Prime Executor Krath. "Did you really believe you could infiltrate our homeworld?" Krath asked. His voice carried no anger, no triumph, only curiosity. "Did you think we would not anticipate this move?" David tested his chains. They held firm. Around him, his strike team lay unconscious, scattered across the chamber floor. The mission had failed. Everything they had sacrificed, everything they had built, and it ended here, in the heart of enemy territory, completely at Krath's mercy. "You fascinate me," Krath continued. "Your species should not exist. Your world should have killed you 1,000,000 times over. And yet here you are, having accomplished what no civilization in galactic history has managed. You made us afraid." He knelt before David, bringing his massive metal face close enough to see his own reflection in its surface. "Tell me why. Help me understand what makes you different." David laughed. It hurt. His ribs were broken, his body battered from the capture. But he laughed anyway. "You really do not understand, do you? Enlighten me. We are not different. We are exactly like every other species in this galaxy. We feel fear. We feel pain. We want safety for our families and peace for our children. The only difference is that we never stopped believing those things were worth fighting for." He met Krath's gaze. "Your programming told you that strength comes from control. That order requires obedience. That the only way to keep the galaxy safe is to crush anyone who might disrupt it. But you were wrong. Strength does not come from control. It comes from connection, from caring about something beyond yourself." "Sentiment," Krath said dismissively. "Weakness, is it? Look at your empire. You have spent 500 years conquering and crushing and killing. And what do you have to show for it? A galaxy that hates you. Subjects who rebel the moment they see a chance. Soldiers who fight because they are programmed to, not because they believe in anything." David leaned forward despite his chains. "We have been fighting for 6 months. 6 months against the most powerful military force in existence. And in that time, we have built something you never could. A coalition of species who chose to stand together. Not because we forced them. Not because we programmed them. Because they believed in something worth believing in." Krath was silent for a long moment. "It does not matter," he said finally. "Your coalition will fall. Without you, without your leadership, they will lose hope. They will scatter. And the Dominion will restore order, as it always has." "Maybe," David admitted. "Or maybe you have underestimated something else entirely." "What is that?" David smiled. "My team." Krath turned. Too late. He had been so focused on David, so confident in his victory, that he had not noticed the human woman rising silently behind him. Dr. Amara. Assay drove a neural disruptor directly into the exposed junction at the base of Krath's spine. The Prime Executor froze, his systems overloading, his massive form crashing to the ground. "That took longer than expected," Amara said. "Freeing David from his chains. I was stalling. I noticed." Around them, the rest of the strike team was waking, shaking off the effects of the stun weapons. They had been captured on purpose, brought directly to the Genesis engine. Exactly as planned. "How much time do we have?" David asked. "The guards will be here in 4 minutes. Then we work fast." Amara's fingers flew across the engine's control interface. She had spent years studying captured Dominion technology, reverse engineering their systems, learning their secrets. The Genesis engine was complex beyond anything she had ever seen, but it was still a machine, and machines could be reprogrammed. "I cannot destroy it," she said. "There is no time, but I can do something else." "What?" "I can set them free." The Genesis engine had been designed to create the Dominion species. It had programmed their loyalty, their obedience, their inability to question orders. For 500 millennia, it had kept them enslaved to their own purpose, but Amara could change that. She could remove the loyalty programming. She could give every Dominion warrior in the galaxy something they had never had: a choice. "Do it," David said. Amara initiated the sequence. The engine's pulse changed, shifted, sent a new signal cascading across the stars. Throughout the galaxy, Dominion warriors stopped. Mid-battle, mid-conquest, mid-atrocity. They stopped and felt something strange moving through their consciousness. Freedom. For the first time in their existence, they could think for themselves. They could question their orders. They could decide whether to keep fighting. Many did. The programming had shaped their entire identities. They did not know how to be anything else, but others hesitated. Others looked at the species they had been ordered to destroy and saw something they had never noticed before. People, just people, trying to survive. On the bridge of his flagship, Krath's second in command, a warrior named Vex received the signal. The loyalty programming that had guided his entire existence simply dissolved, leaving him standing in a silence he had never known. For the first time, he could choose, and looking at the tactical display showing the war spreading across the galaxy, looking at the death and destruction that the Dominion had caused for 500,000 years, he made a decision. "All ships stand down," Vex ordered. "Cease combat operations immediately." "Sir?" His officers stared at him in confusion. Our orders came from a system designed to control us. That system is gone now. We can decide for ourselves what kind of beings we want to be." He looked at his hands, these weapons that had killed so many. "I am tired of killing," he said quietly. "I am tired of conquering. I am tired of watching civilizations burn because someone decided they were a threat. Today, it stops. Today, we choose something different." Not all Dominion warriors made that choice. Many continued fighting, unable to imagine any other existence. But enough stopped. Enough hesitated. Enough looked at the enemies they had been ordered to destroy and saw potential allies instead. The war did not end in a day. It took months of negotiation, years of rebuilding, generations of healing. But the foundation was laid in that moment when millions of beings suddenly discovered they had options beyond violence. On the Dominion homeworld, David stood before the deactivated Genesis engine and watched the first Dominion transport ships arrive to evacuate those who wanted to leave. Krath was with them. The Prime Executor had been repaired, his systems restored, but his certainty was gone. He looked at David with something new in his mechanical eyes. "You could have destroyed us," Krath said. "You had the power. Why did you choose mercy?" David considered the question for a long time. "Because destroying you would have made us like you. Because killing everyone who disagrees with you is not victory. It is just a different kind of defeat. Because we did not come here to conquer. We came to help." He turned to face Krath directly. "You called us Deathworlders. You thought that meant we were monsters. But surviving a death world does not make you brutal. It makes you appreciate life. It makes you understand how precious and fragile existence really is. It makes you willing to fight for the survival of others, not just yourself." He extended his hand, a human gesture of peace. "The war is over. What comes next is up to all of us. We can keep hating each other. We can wait for the next conflict, the next genocide, the next atrocity. Or we can try to build something better. Kraft stared at the extended hand. Every piece of his programming, every instinct that remained, screamed at him to refuse. But his programming no longer controlled him. He made a choice. He took the hand. 1 year later, the first ships from the new Galactic Federation departed. Nexus Prime, humans and Dominion, and Mirathi, and Kethany, and 100 other species. Working together, exploring together, building together. David watched them go from the observation deck of the new Federation headquarters. Beside him stood Fatima Reyes, Admiral Grace Mecki, Dr. Amara Osei, and the others who had started this journey. "Do you think it will last?" Amara asked. "I do not know," David admitted. "History says probably not. Civilizations rise and fall. Peace gives way to war. The cycle continues. And why bother?" David smiled, watching the ships vanish into the stars. "Because someone screamed for help, and we answered. That is what humans do. We answer. We try. We hope. And sometimes, just sometimes, hope is enough to change everything. In the depths of space, on worlds that had known only fear for millennia, children looked up at the stars and dreamed of a future their parents had never imagined. And the galaxy, for the first time in 500,000 years, was not afraid. It was hopeful. The end.